Okay, we're going to do a walk and talk today, heading down to the beach with the dog on a beautiful Sunday. And as you can see in the background, it's finally hydrangea season here on Outer Cape Cod. It's been late in arriving, but pretty spectacular. So each weekend for Macrolens subscribers, I put out a note on Friday. This week it was Thursday in light of the holiday. And I follow up with a video version on Saturday. Some people don't like to read so much, and the notes can be a little lengthy. At any rate, I wrote about Kevin Warsh at the ECB conference in Sintra, Portugal. And so I watched it on Wednesday. On Thursday, I poured through the transcript. I then cut and pasted the relevant paragraphs. I wrote about them. Now on Saturday, I watched the whole thing again so I could clip the video versions of the relevant passages. Then I spoke about them, and then I watched the whole freaking thing again. So basically everything this guy said, I've read or watched half a dozen times now, and he's not effing hiking rates. It's just abundantly obvious. No, it doesn't hit us over the head with forward guidance, but there was a lot to chew on in this appearance. The guy sounds like he is set to audition for a host role on the All In podcast or something, like major AI maximalist. At least that's how he portrays himself. And the issue of the demand impetus from AI CapEx versus the productivity enhancement that may or may not come later was prevalent throughout the discussion. And Warsh was pretty clear regarding the demand impulse and whether it's inflationary. Yes, he said it's up to central banks as to whether or not it's inflationary, but he said we're monitoring the effects. Pretty clear that he hasn't made a decision that it's something that's problematic that needs to be responded to. Secondly, throughout his comments was the notion that there's demand pressure now, but supply will expand because of the productivity enhancement, and this problem is going to fix itself. How long is that going to take? Obviously, there's a temporal problem. The demand comes first, the supply expansion comes second. Bank of Canada Governor Macrolens made a comment that, we're not really seeing in surveys that companies are finding a big productivity enhancement from this yet. Warsh followed up on that and said that within 6 months, he thinks we're going to see those surveys change dramatically in a positive way. So basically, there's demand pressure now that he thinks is going to fix itself in 6 months. This does not sound like a guy who thinks he needs to slam the brakes on this AI CapEx, which is clearly on the margin what's driving nominal aggregate spending at a rate that's a little bit too hot. So yes, he's fine coming across as hawkish. He's fine, as is the ECB, with markets continuing to price more rate hikes that in their mind helps them prevent second round effects from emerging, blah, 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 blah. But he's not hiking rates because here's the problem. We all know that AI CapEx is the marginal factor for now driving too hot nominal growth. If they hike, implicit in a hike is the message that we need to put the brakes on AI CapEx. So you then risk the equity rally unwinding in rather unruly form once policymakers have said this needs to slow. And the economic ramifications of slowing AI CapEx, given that it's dominating the economic growth story, are critical. So I don't think we find an equilibrium at slightly slower nominal growth. We either take it a little too hot or we're going to cool the hell out of it. And they don't want to do that. So I think we can forget about a rate hike from Kevin Warsh, at least until his task forces come back with some conclusions early next year. Rate hikes off the table, on the margin, bullish for bonds. We'll have more on rates later this week. I do think the AI CapEx narrative is taking on water, very important for the rates market. On the flip side, spending probably going to be pretty solid through the summer months here in the US. So range trade that will ultimately resolve in lower rates in the bond market. Again, we'll have more later this week. Warsh ain't hiking.